Welcome, Dr. Sklar. You can start presenting right now.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here for Cartier, and I am happy to be here and talk about cost-effective, sustainable energy solutions in agriculture. And again, just to clarify, I wear two different hats. One, I've run a 20-year-old company where I blend clean energy all over the world. And you can see it with my advanced batteries and controls, energy efficiency, fuel cells, geothermal heat pumps, heat engines, all the kinds of micro hydropower and marine energy, modular biomass, photovoltaics, small wind, and solar thermal, including concentrated solar power, daylighting, water heating, industrial preheat, and air conditioning. And then I also teach 3 interdisciplinary courses at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C., and I am energy director of the Environment and Energy Management Institute at GW. And I am an affiliated professor with CATIA for quite a long time. So I enjoy being here and talking about sort of practical things. I do want to start off also by saying you're looking at 2 buildings in the center. In the front is my home, and you can see with the solar panels, a giant SpongeBob for the holidays. And I have geothermal heat pumps, solar water heating, and a huge battery bank with many different kinds of energy efficiency. And then in the rear building, I have is my office building, 2 stories, which has solar water heating, a small wind turbine, a hydrogen fuel cell tied to a smart battery bank. And both buildings, by the way, are totally self-powered, 100%. So I want to start this by just sort of putting everything in perspective. And this is by DLR from Germany, their research. And this shows that every day, we get almost more than 2,500 times the amount of energy we need from solar, 200 times more wind energy than we need on the planet, 1 times more hydropower, 2 times more wave and tidal marine energy, 5 times more geothermal, and 20 times more biodegradable biomass. And all these renewable resources are way more than we need. Now, we only need to access a very small percentage of this to meet our energy needs, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So I always like to put in perspective of the region. This is a renewable energy map of Central America, 2017, and we have a lot of resources in the region. Actually, Central America is a resource-rich region, and particularly in hydropower, geothermal, wind, solar, and biomass, so all the renewables. And it, of course, is going in both in a distributed manner on site and in the utility grid at a fairly high rate now, luckily in my lifetime. So I want to talk about trends, and I love to use this chart from McKinsey and Company. And this looks at the 12 disruptive technologies on the planet. And I just want to say that many of them are tied to what we're about to talk about today. And you can see in the middle here, we have advanced materials. And advanced materials is, we're in a material science renaissance, really, meaning that we are able to make new kinds of materials that we never could before, that allow wind turbines to be in the ocean with salt and acids, allow solar panels to last longer, allow geothermal piping to take heat longer, and of course batteries to help with our energy storage. So you see advanced materials in the center, but renewable energy on top, energy storage also on the left, and a lot of the internet-related technologies. And remember, we use sensors and controls in renewable energy systems, energy storage systems now. And I also use these same systems to actually provide power. That's part of my business. Everything from cell towers and data centers and phone switching lines and all of that. So I use it to power these sources, and then I use these services, the Internet of Things, cloud technology, automation of knowledge networks, mobile internet, to in the very systems all over the world. Put out by United Nations Environmental Program, Global Trends in Renewable Energy Investment in 2018. And as you can see, it's going up. And that's the whole point, is that we have trillions of dollars now invested in renewables, energy efficiency, and advanced energy storage, which, by the way, includes pumped hydro, battery banks, flywheels, compressed air and liquids, gravity, hydrogen. So lots of different storage technologies in the marketplace. I put this in here because Al Gore, who was our vice president, has a 400-acre farm in Tennessee, and he is pretty much doing a training program talking about how much carbon is stored in forests and in our land. And of course, Katya has been a key player in that. Everything from biochar and nitrogen fixing trees, and of course our dairy. So I just want to put in that we're training this, but the topsoil on our under our feet stores more than 3 times as much carbon as forests. And so I want us to remember that we, in talking about this, are not only talking about increasing profitability and increasing soil tilth, and but also protecting our global climate. So the International Energy Agency has said that we've had record growth during 2020 and will grow in 2021 for the renewables, and despite the pandemic. And I wanted to put that here, that this is a surprise. I expected global markets to go down, but in fact, global markets have increased during the pandemic and will increase again in 2021, led by wind, hydropower, and solar PV, but also increases in geothermal by far, and some marine energy, and of course the energy storage technologies. This is a slide on the International Panel on Climate Change, United Nations, and they're talking about the 1.5 degree centigrade threshold. The world is teetering over that, and we need to make sure everything we do in how we build our buildings, how we move ourselves with transportation, and of course, how we grow our food. So this is out of globaldata.com, an analysis looking at global biomass doubling by 2025. And I guess the whole point in this slide is growing all over the world. And that is because we also have, aside from a huge resource that's renewable, we have better technology coming online. And in the United States, biogas is advancing. This 2017 article is 2,200 operational biogas producing sites in the country, 171 on-farm digesters, which, by the way, 3 years later, 2020, were about 417. So they've more than tripled in the last few years. 1,500 digesters at wastewater plants, and of which, but sadly, only 250 use the produced biogas themselves. The rest they just put onto the grid. So, and there are well over 11,000 potential sites for new projects. So, you know, we have huge resources in the United States. and opportunities as we do in Central America and Latin America. 2017 was an important year because globally over 55% of new generation capacity came from clean energy on the electric grid. And since 2017, so the last 3 years, every year since then, more renewable electricity has gone on the globe's electric grids than any other kind of energy. So while we're still a small part of the total, because we have these older legacy plants, of course, we are, as far as new generation coming on, these technologies lead. And they lead because they're more reliable, and now they are less expensive. So this is anaerobic digestion in Europe, and this is the orange shows where it's being used bio-waste in agriculture for energy. So I just want to point that out. And of course, it says anaerobic digestion in Europe. Notice the country of Brazil is not European, and they put that in this slide. This is an International Energy Agency slide, Australia also, and France, Norway. So Australia is also not European, and so and Brazil there, and Korea. But the point being here is we're starting to see biomass, biodigestion, particularly in the ag sector, a very, very important part and a significant part of our energy resources, and needs to be more. This is also out of the International Energy Agency Task 37, that there are more than 10,000 biogas plants in the IEA countries. And so I just wanted to show you the slide more than get into it. So the agricultural goal, this is really what we are talking about today, coming from the link Climate-Wise Agriculture, is to deliver sustainable food and agriculture, maintaining livelihoods of local farmers, and ensure food accessibility. So that's our goal, economic. But we need more efficient land and water use and reduce other inputs such as pesticides. We need sharp reductions of fossil fuels, not just sharp, huge. We need greater biodiversity and conservation on our farms. And we need to reduce ag waste through reuse. And that's very important. So I want to cover an issue that I am actually very involved in. And the one issue is that renewables and farming should be co-compatible. What I mean by that is it is crazy to have a solar on a farm or wind on a farm without farming. So we use, in the United States, the rents coming from the wind turbines help the farm economy. And you can see cows and food being grown around these turbines. There is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't. There's a big move, and this is from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, to look at seeding the grounds around solar panels if you're not going to farm with native plant species. First of all, it stops movement of water and mud, which has plagued a lot of the installations in Europe and the United States. It's ridiculous. And using gravel. Why not use native species plants that don't grow tall to block the panels, but also create places for pollinators, bees, and butterflies, and other fauna. So the whole issue of using plants like this make way more sense. It stops soil erosion, and it's very compatible with solar. More importantly, in all my projects that I work with in agriculture, I put the panels up higher so cows can go under the panels. And you know at CATIA, you learned already that overexposure to sun causes digestive problems and cancers in farm animals. So having certain shades under panels make a lot of sense. And there's absolutely no reason. It adds 0.5% to the cost of the solar to put it up a few feet higher so cattle can go under there. There's a whole art form now, what's called agrivoltaics, which means agriculture underneath solar panels. Same principle, put them a little higher, space them a little more, and grow crops that don't actually thrive well in high direct sun, and a little slight shading makes them grow better and retain moisture. So we're doing more and more of these projects, and I put this one in, I love. Worked in North Carolina on this with an alpaca farm, and these alpacas, by the way, love going under the panels for shade. It is so funny. I was told they wouldn't, and they all love and hang out in there. They have a lot more fun. Nothing better than a happy alpaca. So this is a farmer's guide to solar put out by the national labs. And sheep tend to like growth. This study claims that for some reason that cattle grazing is not compatible, but that's only because they put the modules low. If you put the modules higher up, there's no problem. I've never had one. I have hundreds of installations of high photovoltaic panels ground mounted above the cattle height, above the head of the cattle, and I've never had any problems in damage. So, as you know, the goal here is to use the waste from livestock, crops, poultry litter too, wastewater if there is any, from the manure lots, food waste, and use the biogas that comes for heat and electricity, potentially also for vehicles, tractors, and of course at the digestate at the bottom of the anaerobic digester is a wonderful fertilizer or soil amender, and I've used it all over the world. They're great, and so we're going to get into this a little bit. These are looking at biogas systems. Now this is U.S. data. But look at how many we have for livestock waste here. So that's very, the potential is huge. And so even more than wastewater. So we need to access this way more. So we're going to go on a little travel around here to take a look at different plants. So this is Smithfield. And they're looking at using manure for their pigs and hog waste sludge, and they incorporate it into fertilizers. So absolutely economic. They have opening up a second fertilizer production facility in Florida, which is what this article is about this year. And it's just saying this is good business. They call this nutrient management, and that's fine. I don't care what you call it. But anyway, you can reduce petroleum-based fertilizers and at the same time find a way to recycle the waste productively into a positive economic benefit is the goal we should be doing here. This is an article looking at Veolia, which is in South America company, and they're looking at they're doing a lot of projects in poultry litter and wood scrap to electricity, and so they're actually doing a 25 megawatt facility in Georgia, another one in Maryland. So at any rate, we're seeing these poultry litter is a problem because again it's mixed with straw. So generally, there are some cases where I've seen biodigesters used, but a lot more looking at gasifiers or other types of ways to create a synthetic gas, biogas from poultry litter. This is a project in 2019, and I happen to like this particular project I was involved with. It's in Massachusetts, and you can see the two bubbles where they're getting it from and poultry, in fact. That's the low building in the far picture here. And it goes actually right into the gas pipeline. So this is a way they're bringing both food scraps and litters into larger scale production. But this would work well on a large farm as well for electricity generation and heat. By the way, with poultry, as you all know, probably better than I do, they're very temperature sensitive. So if you want to have a situation where you can maintain temperatures perfectly, and of course food processing, everything like canneries of all sorts, heat and electricity are both needed, and it makes biogas worth it. This is an article in California, and this is a microgrid, meaning a couple of different technologies brought together with batteries. And in this, as you know, California has had a host of forest fires over the last 3 years, big ones. And so this Stone Edge farm near Sonoma kept operating for 10 days with the grid down. So there, and again, how I do it on farms is I plan it so it runs the critical functions, the water pumping, right? Those kinds of things that must be operating no matter what. So milking machines on dairy farms, if you're using them, things like that. So that's an example. This is a little gasifier. It's out of Community Power Corporation of Colorado. They have 25 and 50 kilowatt units. This is actually in El Salvador, and it's working off of wood chips. Remember, you're pumping oxygen into these. You're not combusting it, so it's very clean and a high power ratio, and we're producing electricity. And there's no reason these are deployable in little containers. I use them all the time. And there are about 30 companies that make small biomass gasifiers that, depending, of course, on the size of the farm and the energy needs. This technology I brought in for Puerto Rico during the hurricanes. You know, they got hit by 3 and their grid was ripped out. So this is World Water from New Jersey. They have deployable solar-powered water pumping and purification units. This does not require connection to the electric grid or diesel, and these do 3,000 to 4,000 gallons a day. So they work great, and they're very deployable. I've used these all over the world, and again, for farms that need pumping, and they have units like these. That's not Mobile Max Pure, but it's their pumping version of this that ties to irrigation pumps or just deep well pumps, and they do very well, and they can do high volume. I have some of these in California, Mexico that are doing 40 pumping sites and things like that. It's just amazing. This is an article looking in French Guiana, looking at a renewables mix, and so this is using a cacao facility and plus forestry operations, and it was commissioned in 2020. Here's another article on poultry scrap. This is Philippines 2018 using pineapples. And again, there's into biogas. And you're doing the same thing I showed you earlier. You're putting it into a container, a bubble. And again, I've had 3 issues with biogas plants that you need to be aware of. One is they need it needs to be at a certain temperature. I generally have them black so they absorb the heat rays of the sun, so I don't need auxiliary heating. They can have small heat exchangers to keep it from getting too hot. I use solar panels with little motors to stir inside. It needs to be stirred gently. Solar totally does that wonderfully. And the only other issue, and now we have all these apps and other kinds of software. I can see if the gas rate gets slowed down. If you see that there is a lower transformation of the biomatter to biogas, it could be it's too hot or cold, of course, not being stirred consistently, or there's some bacterial contamination. And if you have it with the right sensors and controls, you can see that issue come in early and figure out how to respond to that. And it may need to mean that you need to add more bacteria to the units to overcome the foreign bacteria that got introduced. In the worst cases, of course, shut it down and restart. But the issues are we have so much more tools now to ensure continuous operation than we ever had before. This is the unit we put in Puerto Rico. And of course, it's just a big black, I told you we painted black tank. The solar panels with the mixers the panels of course are on top. And this is a 2 megawatt facility of Napier grass with agricultural waste for farms. And so, because Puerto Rico has experienced, including this end of 2020, severe outages due to hurricanes and storms. And so we're planning to have distributed energy throughout the island, and biogas is going to be one of the plays. And of course, this is in a food production area, and to have distributed generation where you grow and process foodstuffs is important. This is out of the Center for Agricultural and Natural Resources Policy. And what this is about is they're looking at what is the economic value of poultry litter. And so remember, poultry litter, bringing it into energy is really worth a lot. So I really want to stress that it's a lot easier to use something productive, than deal with the waste over time. And this is more on that. There's a lot of data. You probably all have it on installed capacity. I just put some slides in there from looking at photovoltaic and wind capacity in Central America. World Watch Institute, which is an environmental think tank, has been very active in Central America, in Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. And so they collect data. There's so much data and this one is about a solar system that withstood a hurricane in the Caribbean. And I guess the whole point of this is if you follow code, whether it's on a building or ground mounted, we can withstand any kind of hurricane or flooding. And I have to tell you, in the Virgin Islands, I had 3 systems, fairly large, 2 that met my code specifications, 1 where the owner refused, and I had to withdraw from the project. And after the hurricane went through, the 2 that I oversaw were operating wonderfully, and the 1 where the owner skimped on, I told him I wanted 100 pounds per square foot, meaning how deep and how much cement goes in the footers, and he didn't want to do it, and it was all blown away. So these systems are very durable if they're put into the right specifications. This is, you guys work Organization of Tropical Studies, and so they're looking at reducing their consumptions using energy efficiency and solar on the roof. This is how they deal with some of their buildings, beautiful layout. And the point again being well-insulated buildings with solar water heating, and they don't have that, and photovoltaics should be common. and in the farm sector without question. This is in Haiti. This is done by Katia. This is the first microgrid in Haiti. Provides power for 47 families. Ground mounted, working very, very well. And this is another microgrid that EarthSpark did in Haiti, in Tuberon, and they just got funded in May of last year to build 22 more microgrids in Haiti. And these are all agricultural communities, by the way. So while it says it's going to the houses, it's also going to farms and doing some food processing. This is a Vermont coffee company going 100% renewable, getting methane gas from cow manure. The other issue I guess I wanted to highlight with this slide is looking at the farms you're working with. What are the other end users for the biogas, and what other small business opportunities to promote biogas digestion, for instance, that you're putting in farms to the local community. So I also wanted to just point out, I know it's not the exact core of this presentation, but cities can be farm centers. This happens to be in my area here in metropolitan Washington. Community gardens are all over. It particularly helps areas, lower income areas that don't have as many options for fresh vegetables and don't have as many food stores in the lower income communities. So how we handle that is fundamentally organic community gardens. And so that's a wonderful way to bring food to people, healthy food to people. Puerto Rico, since its hurricanes, issued a formal microgrid rule. It's the first U.S. governmental entity to do it, followed then by the state of Hawaii. And these are formal rules now for microgrids to connect to the utility grid. And again, a microgrid is a mixture of renewable resources, usually with storage, some cases also with diesel, and they can passively separate from the grid when the grid's down and power things, loads near them, and then connect back up to the grid when it's operating. I want to push. I do many projects. I have hundreds and hundreds of small wind turbines, and I'm talking 10 kilowatts and less all over the world. And first of all, we have a lot of wind, even almost unmeasurable, all over the world. And I have it, I told you, in my building here. And this is a residential area, very quiet. They do not kill birds or bats. Wind, as you know, except for on the coast, blows mostly at night, meaning I can downsize my battery banks because solar is by day, because solar only works with the sun out. And then wind adds to it at night. And of course, when it's rainy and stormy, it's not sunny. So it's very compatible with photovoltaics, and I'm a big believer in small wind. It's underutilized. It's lower cost, actually, than solar, and there's no reason we should not use more of these on farms for electric power all over, either as remote battery chargers for irrigation pumps, for instance, or water pumps for cattle water, or just to add along with the photovoltaic systems. Energy storage. Most of my projects all over the world use energy storage. I showed you in the beginning my 2 buildings do. And so this is a wonderful graph because it shows what the customer in the orange color gets from the batteries, what the electric utility does if it's tied to the grid at the bottom, the blue, and of course the regional transmission authority along the bigger power lines. In any case, I want to point out that batteries have dropped 61% in cost over the last 5 years are coming down another 23% in cost over the next 3, are already at electric grid parity here in the United States for more than half the grid. For remote applications are absolutely cost effective. And of course, photovoltaics and batteries have no moving parts, so have less maintenance and operation. So I am a big believer, and I use them all over the place. And I use all kinds of batteries, and we'll get into that. So this is a chart from Bloomberg New Energy Finance on the battery costs. Now they're looking at lithium ion, but I want to remind you that even the more traditional batteries have come down in costs, and a whole new range of batteries. So I use AGM, absorbed glass matrix batteries, in my home system, and lithium ion in my office building. They're just wonderful. I like the absorbed glass matrix because I don't have to air condition or vent these sealed batteries as I do with lithium ion. Of course, no concern for thermal runaway and fire. But we have sodium batteries now, we have vanadium batteries, we have nickel batteries, we have all sorts of batteries. I work with 11 different kinds of batteries on the market and different materials. And so please remember, not everything is 100% lithium ion. I also want to stress that you should pick software that's simple and understandable. I have a big problem in projects where the software only needs somebody with a PhD in a certain technology. That's ridiculous. In this case, I can look at a string of batteries and see how full they are and what their temperature is. That's actually the state of charge and the temperature are the only two things you need to know about a sealed battery. So if they're all about the same temperature and they're all about the same state of charge, you're okay. If one is significantly lower, like the orange one in the center, you may want to first check the wiring and make sure it's snug on the battery. There's no calcification like you see in car batteries, or no rodent or other animal has chewed on the wire. And then if all that is fine, then it could be the battery itself. Change it out, because the most underperforming battery brings the other batteries down to its level. So you want to catch that fast, and there's no reason not to do that. And there's a lot of intuitive diagnostics, or really what I call performance-based diagnostics, looking at exactly what's going on with the battery bank. I also want to say I've done a lot of village lighting programs. This one is actually out of Africa, Econex's largest cellular company, where they sell this, lease purchase it. It saves them from going to kerosene, and it's a wonderful system. They get 4 LED lights, the solar panel, and the battery bank with little LED lights on the right there. You can see the state of charge. But these kind of products should also be in barns and other outbuildings in the ag sector. They work great. Water. There's all sorts of great water pumping and purification systems. This is Lucid Energy that does inside a pipe pumping. So if you have an outflow from, let's say, a food processing plant, you can turn an in-pipe turbine, if it's a gravity feed, and produce electric power at your facility. I love this technology, by the way. It's a great idea. We have a lot of water that leaves everything from water and sewage treatment plants, canneries, certain farm operations. Why not produce power with the gravity of the water as it flows through the pipes? I mentioned this before in the water purification. This is the World Water's Mobile Max system, and it's on a trailer, and you put it in there, and it does pumping. What's interesting with this particular technology, it can drive up to 600 horsepower pumps, but not only that, it fools the pump. So if there's a cloud that goes by, the panels, and you have less output, it fools the pump in maintaining the exact rate and therefore pressure, so you don't have this up and down that you do get. And so if you don't want to use batteries and you only want to pump in the day, these units work very well. They have all kinds of different small stream systems. This is a system that gets dropped in a stream and can produce electricity. This is up to 5 kilowatts. They have little 2 kilowatt versions. Several companies make these around the world. I love them. You have a lot of farms have water going through, in some cases not all year even, and these lower cost, smaller pumps work wonderfully. This is looking at, in Minnesota, testing solar-friendly pollinator plants. And as I mentioned earlier, we have, in the United States, we expect to have 3 million acres devoted to solar farms by 2030 and 6 million by 2050. So we want to make sure we're promoting diverse habitats. And again, to stop soil erosion under these larger solar farms, even the ones on farms. And again, I can't tell you how many systems I've seen that have that problem. This is another free flow marine turbine. We drop in, again, small 2 kilowatt unit, works great on farms. For farm buildings, this is my project at American University that uses solar air preheaters, solar water heaters, and photovoltaics. And the whole point of showing you this picture is I want you to look at farm structures as multi-technology approaches on the farm. And roofs are a horrible thing to waste. And if you can create hot water and electricity and also preheat if you need it, then you can do that. Codes and standards. In the United States, Japan has its own, of course. Europe has its own. We have United Laboratories for every electronic appliance in a building, and we have them for photovoltaic panels and inverters and transformers and charge controllers. So I put the different categories under UL just so you have it, plus the link at the bottom. I don't use anything that does not have a code and standard from some entity. By the way, sad to say that some of these are faked, so you do have to check. When I have a big project and I have solar panels coming in, I check and make sure the ratings on the panels are real. And you have to actually assign somebody to look at those labels and then run a label check to make sure they're not bogus. Solar water heating also has collector certification, the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation. So you can see, let's say, what the BTU output is on a cloudy day on a particular collector. And they have data pages on the materials and specifications. Again, I don't do solar thermal without an SRCC or comparable rating on the panel and the system. In the United States, we have an installer certification called the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. And again, I just have to say that here again, I want my 92% of all technology failures, and I want to repeat this, 92% of all technology failures are related to poor installation, not the technology. So I either have to make sure that the installers are trained either by this kind of outfit. There are certain companies that have training programs and certain nonprofits that have training programs. I really want to urge you all listening on this webinar, no matter where you are, to work with a local university or nonprofit or contact NABCEP, but to put your people through training programs, because otherwise you're going to experience problems that you hadn't anticipated. I want to end up by talking about different technology solutions for resource assessment and installing. This is one company out of Seattle, 40 PhD hydrologists, oceanographers, and meteorologists and supercomputers, and they can tell you anywhere on Earth what your wind and solar and hydro is by latitude and longitude. And for wind, they can tell you at the hub height, meaning how high the actual wind turbine has to be to access most of the wind most of the time. And I've used this all over the world. It's very accurate. There are 11 companies that have similar kinds of technology. It is crazy not to do a resource assessment. They don't cost much to give you the best option. There are also other technologies to do rooftops. I showed you at the beginning of this slideshow the pictures of my buildings. They can actually focus down. This is the eagle view and show you the roofs of the buildings. They can put software over it to look at the season of the year. They can assess what trees or mountains or other buildings cause shading, so you can place the solar panels in the right spot so it won't get it'll get the maximum output. And I want to remind you all, good planets are hard to find. This is our home. You can go and look out in your telescope and you won't see any of them that look like this. And I do expect there'll be life on other planets, but they won't look anything like us. So as some of the environmental groups say, there's no planet B. So agriculture has a huge environmental impact, but also has a huge benefit in environment if we handle how we deal with waste and energy and fertilizer and pesticide inputs. And it is all cost effective. So the last thing I want to say to you is there are no dumb questions, meaning that you can ask me anything. We're going to answer some questions at the end of this webinar, and I'm exactly on time. I'm so proud of myself. But this is for you. If you can't think of a question during the webinar, or you can't fit in, or something comes to you, I answer every question. I can give you studies, links, other professionals in the network. So whatever questions you have, I do not want you to be shy. And I answer all my questions. I acknowledge and answer all questions. So if for some reason you send me something and it doesn't get answered in a few days, send it back again and say, hey, answer my questions. I get lots of emails, and sometimes I make a mistake and delete a few, but I want you to persevere. The last thing I want to say to you is you are professionals, and anyone taking this webinar has some interest and some influence in the agricultural sector, either as a practitioner or as a guide or as a researcher. And we have a wonderful set of cost-effective practical solutions being used by farmers and agricultural businesses all over this world. And I learn new things every day. So the point being, there is no problem that we can't bring technology, intelligence, and money to provide cost-effective practical solutions. And so with that, thank you for bearing with me in this sort of little trip into different technology and markets. I'm sorry I can't cover everything in such a short time, but I wanted to use this as a way to make you think of things, to ask great questions. So with that, Scott Sklar here, signing off. Thank you, Katia, again for hosting this, and happy to answer any questions.